Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Talking Around the Library Tree. We are going to be chatting a bit about comics today with Charlotte Holgate and Jem Sosnowsky.
Hi everyone. So my name is Jem. I'm faculty librarian for FHM. Charlotte?
Hi, I'm Charlotte and I'm here on work experience from my local high school.
And my name is Ciara. I'm another faculty librarian for Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences.
Lovely. Okay, so we did have a little bit of chat about how we wanted to structure this conversation today. So firstly, we're going to talk a little bit about common assumptions or stereotypes, and specifically that comics are supposedly for boys, which is something that we often hear. So we're going to have a little chat about that, and then Charlotte is going to give us some brilliant recommendations for anyone who maybe didn't think comics were for them and that are kind of have a bit more of a gender neutral kind of theme. And finally, we're going to have a talk about the future of comics. That might be things to do with the small press on different countries.
I think probably a good place to start would maybe be to talk about our first favourite comic, the thing that kind of started it off for us. Do you want to go first, Charlotte?
I think the first comic that I remember truly liking was Asterix. I would read out with my dad because he grew up on them and he would read them to me. I think I was around maybe 7 or 8 when I started reading them, and I remember really liking them. I thought they were hilarious, and I liked the story, I liked the characters, and I liked how the words and pictures were combined to make a new medium that I hadn't really been introduced to. So that was my first proper experience of comics, and the first one that I truly remember sticking with me for quite a while. And I still read them to today. I still find them a great source of entertainment.
Brilliant. Oh, we've just we have all of the old Asterix at home as well, because my son is a similar age, also loves the kind of puns and the humour of it. So that's a really good shout, I'd say. And the first, I think I probably did come across Asterix as a child, but the first one that I would clearly remembering like loving was it's called Fluffy by Simone Lear, and it's this quite bonkers tale of this little rabbit that thinks he's a human and is looked after by his dad, who is a human, and it's this kind of strange little journey that they take across Europe on trains to go and meet up with Michael's family in Italy. And Simone Lear she also does a regular Observer cartoon, and always has quite kind of strange little characters saying unexpected things, and it's always just a little joy to read them. So I think that's probably the first one I remember.
So mine is definitely Uncanny X-Men, and I can see the front cover of the first one I ever bought. It had Juggernaut on the front. And I love those comics in the 90s. They were comics that I was completely addicted to for like probably about 10 years. I bought them religiously every month and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, that's definitely the first one I remember really loving. Okay, so when we started thinking about the things that we wanted to talk about today, and the thing about comics for boys came up when we had a team meeting, and it was just sort of brought up, not that our team thinks that, but it was a kind of thing of, oh, what's this assumption though, that like often it's just like boys that comics are aimed at. And that's kind of when the idea came up that it might be interesting to talk about it on a podcast. So Charlotte, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that. Why do you think sort of that idea of comics are for boys became such a common assumption? Is it something that you've come across?
I have personally come across this. It was in primary school and sometimes in secondary school. I would mention that I'd like to read comics and people would go, "Oh, really?" And I'd be like, well, yes, it's not that much of a difference just because I'm a girl. And it still happens in secondary school sometimes, but not nearly as much. But I feel like it comes from a deep rooted of comics were originally made 1930s, 1940s with a male audience in mind, with the genre being superheroes, which obviously can be for anyone. I'm a massive superhero lover. But because at the time during the wars, there was a big push. Comics were used as like a thing to express patriotism in the war. And so they were aimed at younger men who were considered going into war and younger and younger children, younger boys, who would then take their place as they grew up. That's what they were originally created for. Over time, they obviously became more story-based and mainly ditched the war stories. And while fighting is obviously a key part of superhero stories, it mainly continued as more fantastical. But the characters in those comics were mainly men. They were to appeal to the male audience that would mainly read them. And so as this continued through the years, people grew up, and then they would tell their children that when they grew up with it, oh no, you can't read that. That's only for them. And that continued even as it started to get better and more female superheroes were introduced and more genres of comics and more different types of comics came out. That stigma stayed as it's only for them, because that's what I did, that's what my grandparents did, and because they were created for that initial target audience. And while that target audience did change, the audience continued to think it was for the original target audience and not for the wider accepting people that it was made for today. So it's deep rooted, and while it obviously has gotten a lot better, there's still that mindset of, oh, but it's only for boys. That's because that's what it was created for, and that's what's continued over the years as the idea.
I think that's really interesting because, like, if you think about, so I was a massive Star Wars fan as a teenager, and loved Luke Skywalker. And it was, you know, you might think that as a girl watching Star Wars, you kind of think, right, well, the princess role is the one that I'm supposed to be most interested in. But for me, I was like, I want to be a Jedi Knight. Like, there's no reason why girls can't look at those male characters and think I can see myself in that. You don't always have to be the princess. And I think with Star Wars, although obviously, as you said, with the superheroes, this idea that there's a lot of battling and fighting. Obviously, we've got all the kind of laser shootouts and things and the lightsabers and stuff in Star Wars. But at its heart, I think it's a fairy tale. It's a kind of fantasy about that happens to be set in space with lasers and guns and things. So I think there's a kind of, you need to be able to see it in a broader way, I guess, to know why it would appeal to everybody. Like, stories are for everyone. They're not just for young men going to war, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can't ignore the fact that those sort of gender stereotypes in both of the things that you've just said, the idea that, it is about war or about action, adventure kind of stuff. And obviously, traditionally, that's not something that women have been allowed to take part in quite often. So I think there's, an element of that sort of wider theme as well. And for me, what just sort of struck me as you were talking was, I was thinking about the fact that quite often the whole sort of comics are for boys thing, I think, is also interlinked with that idea that it's about almost like a literacy issue as well. And somehow, like, quite often boys are seen as not reading as much. And if they are, it's comics because they're seen as being for, in inverted commas, reluctant readers, which is something that I always struggled with when I was a school librarian, because I just saw everybody reading comics. And so, I wonder if there's maybe a bit of a link there as well, that idea that we'll maybe give the girls Pride and Prejudice and we'll give the boys a comic book.
Yeah, I think it is a prejudice then, isn't it? As to and you do see that. I think we probably saw it a lot as school librarians, this kind of the idea of what is good for people to read and what is worth spending time reading.
Yes.
And from my point of view, it was like, as long as you're reading something that you love and that you enjoy, that is my main goal here. Like, I'm not trying to kind of improve you. I'm trying to kind of open up that world for you to see how much enjoyable stuff there is out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So bearing that in mind then, I think it's a really good time to ask Charlotte, what sort of comics would you recommend?
Yes, I have. It's also a very long list, but a few that I think would be great recommendations. And my first one is Peanuts. It's a classic.
Absolutely.
And most people will know it's been going since the 60s, but it has such a wide cast and it tackles so many different stories. It's amusing. One of its main characters is a dog who thinks that he's a flying ace pilot. So it is a lovely story that anyone, I think, of any age can enjoy. And it can appeal to anyone, as most stories can. But for a comic that came out in the 60s, it works very well for everyone. And no matter who you are or where you come from, you can find something to connect with in Peanuts, whether it be Snoopy and his grand imagination, or Charlie Brown and his struggles of getting through life daily. There's something about that everyone can see themselves in. And it's obviously a comedy as well. It's very humorous. And there's always a little joke for everyone. Someone will find some part of Peanuts funny. So it's a really good classic idea of a comic. And because it's not serialized, you can just pick one up and you'll understand what's going on. You don't need to invest loads in it. You can just enjoy it as it is. And I think it's a great recommendation for someone who wants to start out with not like grand adventures or something they'll have to dedicate a lot of time to, just something they can find a small book of and get quite a lot of enjoyment out. I think it's a great example of that. And then another one that I think is really good is a manga, which for people who are unaware is a Japanese style of comic called Witch Hat Atelier.
I love that book.
Yes. There's a TV show of it coming out right now, so it's actually gained quite a lot of popularity. Yes, it is very good. I highly recommend it. And it follows a girl called Coco in a world where magic can only be performed by witches and the general public does not know how it works. And she gets roped into this magical world, and she has to learn how to understand it. And she has to encounter other witches and learn how the world works in order to save her mother. And it's very, very interesting. And the art style is...
art is incredible.
The art is incredible. And compared to most long-running mangas from going since 2016, there is not a lot out. I believe there's 15 volumes, which may sound like a lot, but if you compare that to other manga genres, it is a very small number compared to most. And its main characters are 4 young female children, and it is such an interesting story. And it never once abuses the fact that it focuses around women. It is just, these are the characters, and this is what they're going through in this truly fantastic world. And again, the art style is incredible. It's a pleasure to look at, and so is the story. It's so fascinating, and there's always a mystery, and you don't know what's going on, and you want to find out. You want to find out why that magic works like that and why that character acts like that. It truly invests you, and I think it's a very good recommendation for someone who wants to read a female-focused comic and someone who also wants to try manga for the first time, because manga can be quite a scary genre to get into. It's quite short at the moment. It is still ongoing, but you can start it up and you don't have to invest way too much into it. And again, the art style is incredible. Even if you just want to have a look at the artwork, I highly recommend that. It is a pleasure to look at. And then another comic, which actually started on something called Webtoon, which is an online comic publishing, is called Everything is Fine. It's a psychological horror, and it has a very simple art style. There's no shading, there's no nothing.
Yeah, is this the one that's quite sort of scratchy looking?
No, you might have seen it because they've produced graphic novels of it now, and all the people have cat heads. You might have seen it.
That rings a bell.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a psychological horror, and as I mentioned, everyone wears cat heads. You have no idea why, you don't know what they're for, or why people are doing them, wearing these cat heads. But it is a horror, so if someone does like psychological horror, but also wants to find something that's not entirely male protagonist based, it's a great start. And because it was produced on Webtoons, you can read it online. You don't have to go up and pick the book up in store. You can just open up your phone and find it on there. But it follows these people in their lives of this weird town, and the way it creates horror is so interesting, because there'll just be a pause. Someone will say something off, and then there'll be a pause, and then everyone will act like nothing happened. Hence the title, Everything is Fine. Everyone is lying to themselves in this story to just keep up the act that nothing is wrong and everything's going well. And in some moments, you truly feel terrified for what's for the characters, because you have no idea how they're going to react. And due to the art style, no one's faces ever change because of the cat heads. So you can never look at someone's mouth or their eyes to say, are you scared? Are you happy?
Interesting.
All you see is just this blank cat face, and you have to try and understand what's going on. So someone can say something, but you don't understand if they're saying that with good context or bad context. And it's truly interesting. I believe there's now two graphic novels of it out of Waterstones. And again, it's entirely available to you to read online. So if you don't want to go up and pick a physical copy up, you can just find it on your phone. It's really, really good and really fascinating. I believe it's still going. I might be incorrect on that, but I think it is still continuing as we speak. And I think it's a really, really good start. And again, it's terrifying. Not in the way that something might jump scare you, but just the fact that you don't know what's going on and that you can't understand. And that that's so weird. Everything's just a bit off. Everyone is not right. And you can tell from the first few pages of it, it's an incredible story.
It sounds very uncanny.
It is. It truly plays on that. And it's really good. Very weird, but very, very good.
I think as well, it sounds to me that that's quite a good example of how the medium of comics can do something quite different, because the idea that the cat head faces are staying static.
Yeah.
It's something maybe that you wouldn't, that the way that sounds quite unnerving as a reader, you wouldn't necessarily be able to get that in a post.
Yes, it has to be visual, doesn't it?
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to get that across just through text. You need that visual standpoint to understand what's going on. And that's how it truly takes the idea of a comic and uses it to its full advantage. But something a bit more light-hearted than the psychological horror cat talking people is a very cute graphic novel called The Sad Little Ghost Club.
Oh, I love that. I stood in the bookshop just flipping through it and thought, this is great.
It follows these people, and they wear the classic ghost costume, the sheep with the eyes and the mouth. And it follows them working through their lives and meeting other people like them, a sad little ghost club. And as they deal with their lives and their emotions, and they learn things about the world, they learn about each other, and they learn about themselves. It's a truly heartwarming story to read. And the characters are adorable. The art style is really, really cute. And you feel attached to these people, and you want them to do well in their lives. And it's all done as they're wearing little ghost outfits. It's done really effectively. And no matter, well, it is, you do generally need to start from the beginning. Even if you didn't know what was going on, you can, say for instance you picked up volume 2 by mistake, you would still understand what's going on, and you would still feel attached to the characters, what they're going through, and you'd still root for them. That you root for everyone in this comic. You want them to do well, and it's a joy to read, and it's really helpful. It can remind you of the small little things in life that you should be appreciated for. And while it is called The Sad Little Ghost Club, and it can be sad at times, it's a heartwarming comic. It's something that truly inspires joy in people. And I think it's a lovely book to read.
And I can 100% recommend the merch, because I remember the creator was at Thought Bubble a few years ago, so I went and sought her out when she had a beautiful table full of merch. So yeah, pin badges and all sorts of things. It was great.
I think it's got quite a lot to say about, things that are common to a lot of people's experience, not even just young people or teenagers, but like the ideas of depression and identity and friendship and all of those kind of big themes, but it's delivered in such a charming kind of way.
That's a really good word for it. Yeah, charming. I like that. Have you got any more, Charlotte, or was that all of the recommendations?
That was the majority of them.
That seems to be going on with
I was going to say, that's
a good start for
fantastic.
people.
Okay, so we were wondering about what the future of comics is, because obviously you've already mentioned the fact that, comics started in a very specific place, or Western comics started in a very specific place, and it's, come a long way. But what's in the future?
I think the future for comics is incredible. And a lot of factors can play into this reason. One of them I did mention before, webtoons. It's where people online can make a comic and put it on there. Anyone can do it. And so you get all these stories that you wouldn't find in a book or in a bookstore. And it's because these people who might have got turned down by big companies can now express their art how they originally wanted to in the form of comics. and you find some truly incredible ones on there, like one called Lackadaisy that started on there, and that's now getting an animated TV show that's very popular. Again, Everything is Fine has started on there. You have such a huge range on there. If you are interested in horror, you have plenty. If you like mystery, you have plenty. You can find whatever you like on there, and you'll find something of interest. And I think it's incredible that while comics used to be very standardized and you would have maybe 1, 2, 3 publishers that would take you on, now you can just make it and it can go online and anyone can read it, and you don't have to go through the process of doing it through a company. You can just do it independently.
Yeah, didn't Heartstopper start online?
Yes, it did. Yeah, it did. Like that, and that's gained massive popularity. And it shows how something that starts small online through an independent person can become such a huge and cultural phenomenon. And it's an excellent way for people to express their art and create their art and show it off for the world to see. And I think it's an excellent way for people to do it. And I think with more and more webtoons becoming proper graphic novels and becoming more and more popular, I think it's a great segue for more independent creators to have their art seen by the world. And then another thing which I think is contributing to people engaging with comics more is international comics, like manga, for instance. Manga is insanely popular. All of my friends like it. I like it. And the amount of series that people enjoy, because now they have access to what they might have not had access to 20, 30 years ago. And they can see other people's artwork and see what other people from all across the planet think. I believe a lot of French comics are quite popular as well. It's quite a large market in France for comics. And everywhere has got really, really unique comics. And now people can access them more. They're more widely available in your local bookstore. And I think that's incredible that now, while you used to only have the access to the main ones that you would see like through Marvel or DC or Black Horse, you now have this wide range, and it's incredible. And you can read these stories from all over the world.
And that's making it far more inclusive, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And you can find way more stories that you might relate to, you might like. And just there's something for everyone in that area. And then obviously you still have Marvel and DC, and they're still creating comics. More and more publishers that used to only take on standardized books are doing comics now. It's such a wider section and area of interest. And I think that's incredible because now way more people can read them and have access to them and find these truly incredible stories that they'd like to read.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, amazing. So maybe just for one last question for everyone then. We did have a little chat before, so hopefully, I don't know whether Ciara remembered to think of hers. Let's see.
Come to me last.
I'll come to you last. Okay, I'd love to know which characters or creators have helped make comics feel more inclusive. Okay, so I'll start with this one. And actually, when I started, the first thing that came to me immediately was Ms. Marvel. And that was, that came out a while ago now, but as I've been thinking, there's like loads of other stuff that's been coming to me as well. But I think really the thing that struck me is, like Charlotte was saying, how the big publishers like Marvel and DC are eventually starting to understand that people do want to read about other characters and have a more inclusive approach and a more diverse character base. So yeah, Ms. Marvel for me is a really good one that made me sort of realise that those kind of traditional American comics were becoming more inclusive. So I don't know whether, Charlotte, if you can think of anything.
I can. One of the ones that I remember loving, and I still love to this day, is a Marvel character called Squirrel Girl. Yes, she was quite obscure. She now does appear in more media, but I remember reading her books and loving them. And she was she does computer science while she's also a superhero and also likes to be with her friends. She's such an interesting character, and I really do love her and all of her books. And Witch Hat Atelier, which I mentioned before, I remember reading that when I was 8 for the first time, and I loved it.
That makes me feel very old.
Makes me feel old as well now. And then I read that with my friend for the first time because it was at her house, and that's stuck with me for so long. And now that the TV show is coming out, it's incredible to see, and I love the characters in that, and I can relate to a lot of them. And yeah, those were the main two that I remember first reading when I was a bit younger and going, I really like this. Along with Asterix, as of course I mentioned right at the beginning, make me wonder what more is out there. And I really enjoyed reading comics, and I probably will do for the rest of my life.
Awesome. That's what we like to hear.
Well, that's good. I mean, I feel like I can't really top that. I suppose I've just been listening to what Charlotte was saying about the difference that there is, and you walk into a bookshop now to what it would have been like when we were 7, 8, 15, whatever it was. You know, you wouldn't have had the array, the spread, the different genres, you know, the number of authors that are now working in that space, which I think that's a really good outcome of the internet being a way of sort of spreading stuff openly to people and for people to have independent creative control. And I think that's, you know, that's something that is becoming better and better in those traditional spaces.
Absolutely.
Like people are making space for different stories and different voices. I suppose from a kind of inclusivity perspective, one of the things that the boys that I worked with in school, it was an all boys school, but they were quite a good advertisement for not stereotypical traditional male interests. Like they loved a whole range of different things. And one of the things that they brought my attention to was a series called Silent Voice. It was a manga, and it featured a female deaf character. And they really rated that and thought that was brilliant. So we had the whole series in the library. I really loved Paper Girls and really enjoyed that. Like it kind of gave me Stranger Things vibes, but with a all female cast. Loved that. Thought that was really enjoyable. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just really heartening to think that young people growing up now have got such a great, array of stuff that they've got access to. And I've got a child who loves comics, and we get the Phoenix every week, and the array of writers in that is brilliant as well. You've got Emily Kimball, you've got Neil Cameron, all these kind of really interesting people doing really fun stuff and getting kids in from a really young age. So I think the future is bright.
Absolutely. Okay, so lastly, just need to thank people, I suppose. So thank you, Charlotte, first of all. It's really good that you've given us your time, and it's really interesting to get your perspective.
It's been a pleasure.
And thank you, Ciara, obviously.
And thanks, Jem, for coming up with it in the first place. Thanks, everybody. We hope you enjoyed it.